Welcome to the Franchise Founders Podcast. We are on a mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs just like you take action through franchise ownership,
allowing you to obtain more financial freedom, time with family, and ultimately a business that can run on its own without you.
Welcome to the Franchise Founders Podcast. Very excited about this episode. If you've been listening or watching some of our social media posts, I've spoken about our desire to really kind of switch gears with our podcast. We'll still be interviewing franchise founders of brands, as it's the title of our podcast, but we really want to make a push, my co-host Christian and I, to interview franchisees and really get to the nuts and bolts of what the day in the life of a franchisee looks like. What's great, what's not great, just the reality of business ownership. Something that I would never trade in the world is to not be a business owner, but it'd be lying to you to tell you that it doesn't have its challenges too. Even the more you grow your business, there's still challenges. So I'm really excited about this guest. Kasey Kohtala is joining us today. She is a single unit massage owner. She owns a massage brand. She's a strategic partner in a massage brand. And she's joining us today live in our studio. How are you, Kasey?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Dan.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for joining. Just to start out, could you just give me a quick rundown of your career? How did you get into franchising? How did you get into this business? Like, what's the story?
Yeah. So, kind of like what you said, it is fun to be your own boss. I had big dreams of, being my own boss, having my own business. I come from a family of business owners, not franchise business owners. They kind of started from scratch. My background is in sales and medical sales specifically. And like a lot of people out there, I was working corporate. I loved it. I had a team. Everything was great. And, I kind of always had this thought in the back of my head about having a business. And, I kind of think that I'm entrepreneurial at spirit. And it was in 2013, I wandered into a local business here in Atlanta and loved it. And over the years, I just kept asking questions and questions about how's this business run and who owns it and how many members do you have? And, probably they're thinking, who's this guest of ours just asking these random questions? So, and I still do that. I go into different businesses and I'm like, tell me about this business. How'd you get started? And
was it mid-massage?
I'm sorry?
I'm just kidding. Were the questions like mid-massage or was it like?
Well, it depended on the therapist, but no, I'm pretty quiet during my massages, but the front desk and things like that. So years go by, and in about 2015, I started saying, I really kind of want to do this. And so in 2016, I thought, what the heck, I'm going to go down, I'm going to fly, go to the discovery day, and I'll know when I get back if it's a good fit. And I got back, and, at this point in my career, I had been through 2 layoffs and I had luckily gotten saved, right? And so right now during this time, you pull up LinkedIn, social media, there's a lot of people getting laid off and I know what that's like. And so, I looked at my husband then and I said, I'm going to do this. He said, do it. And I said, okay. So I just, wrote the check, dropped it in the mail and I said, we're committed. We're doing it. I'm doing it. So I opened my location in 2017. And the thing I want to say is that when I opened, I kept my corporate job for 2 more years. And that's something I think we don't talk a lot about. People that want to get into franchising is having a second income, whether it's a spouse or whether it's you keep your corporate gig. But I opened in 2017 and it was gangbusters. I mean, our location took off. The response was overwhelming. And I learned a pretty hard lesson during our opening, but in just being prepared. So we opened in 2017 and, we're 5 years old. I still consider us babies, kind of in the franchise system.
Yeah. Toddler, I guess.
Toddler. Yeah.
Pre-K. So you opened this business in 2017 while still keeping your corporate job, and it just goes through the roof. Your sales are going right away.
Yeah. So the first month we hoped for 300, and my thinking was, okay, we're all in. And I remember taking PTO time. I mean, this is the reality of starting your first location, right? I took PTO days from my corporate job to launch and do our grand opening for a week. And we were hoping for 300 prospects the first month, and we got 900. It was insane. In hindsight, our front desk wasn't ready. We closed at like 11%, and had we closed at 25%, it would have been so much better. But, really happy. It's, the phone is ringing, the door is swinging, everything's good. Have a great manager. Fast forward to 2019, and I had a baby in January of 2019. So I was on maternity leave until about April. And in April, I came back to work. I had a new baby, still had my corporate gig, and I had the business. And I made it until about August. And I looked at my husband and I said, something's got to go. Either the baby, the corporate gig, or the business. And, we can't get rid of the baby. And, I was doing this juggling act of going to the store and getting my cash deposits and running them to the bank, and then going to see my clients for my corporate gig, and then running back. And it was just, it was too much. So in August of 2019 is when I left my corporate gig and did my massage business full time.
So you were able to basically say to the corporate job, like, I need to leave, and you already had your business up and running and income coming from it to be able to fall onto.
Yes, income coming from it, but not what I was making in corporate, and you think you have medical benefits, and my husband is also a business owner, right? So it wasn't as cush, but it needed to happen. And then I took over the hiring. When you're in the service-based business, we're hiring massage therapists. Yeah. And in August of 2019, I took over hiring of the therapist. And it's, it really pushed us forward. So
walk me through like that. What was that like when you fully jumped into not having a salary? Like, I'll tell you something crazy, Kasey, that people are like blown away by. I have had, in high school I had a job, college I had a business. So really just the high school job. I've never had a paycheck, like a steady. I had a sales job once. It was mostly commission. So I've lived my entire life without a steady. No, that's not true. When I recently, in May, I sold my business, and for 3 months I ran the company, part of my terms, and I had a salary, and it was pretty nice. I have to say, it was my first time having a salary, and but I went right back to starting another business. So I've never been in that really situation of having a paycheck coming in. Like, so for you, like, you just had a baby, you're running the business, you quit the corporate job, boom, no more steady paycheck. Mm-hmm. What was that like? Were you like super nervous? Did you feel confident?
I was excited, and I was hyper focused. I was like, I've got one thing to focus on. Yeah. But there's this weird thing about being your first time business owner, and there's, paying yourself when you are in control of the payroll, right? You're doing the ADP. We use ADP. And you put in the number you're going to pay yourself based on sales and revenues, and you're doing projections and things like this. And there was this weird shame around paying myself, because I've always come from this thinking of like, head down, focus, go, 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 the money will come, and I kind of was like you. My first position out of school, I was total commission, and I loved it. And that company actually moved me from Kentucky to Atlanta. And I loved the idea of like, you can make as little or as much as you wanted. And so I've had that in me. But when the first couple of years of the business, it was like, you can pay yourself a lot later, but focus on growing. And then you get to a point where you're like, no, I've got to pay myself, like, and I've got to pay myself what I'm worth. And there's this, I had some people around me early on that weren't really clear about helping me figure out how and what's appropriate to pay. So yeah, it was a little bit scary, but it also was super exciting too.
Sure. So what happened next?
So 7 months later, we hit the pandemic, right? So when I left corporate, it was August of 2019. We're rocking and rolling. One thing I do love about our business is I love recruiting. And if you're going to open a service-based business where you have service providers, you have to love recruiting. Like you have to love talking to people, bringing them in, building them up, investing in their development. And I love that kind of stuff. So we're rocking and rolling, we're going along. And in March, 7 months later, is when the pandemic hit. And we said, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks. It's going to shut down for 2 weeks. And we were shut down until May. And then when we reopened, it was like, oh my gosh, we're doing massage. How do you social distance from massage? Yeah. And we kind of thought of things in two groups. It was like we've got our customers and then we have our team members, and we had to make both of those groups comfortable getting massage with all of the precautions in place and things like that.
Wow. So through the pandemic, what was the major takeaway for you? Like, was there anything that happened through that time that like I know for me, like at that time, the business I was running, we came out of COVID. First of all, COVID was like, I went to war. Like I remember thinking that was a year or whatever, it was more than a year, of course, but like that first year was like, felt like I came back from war, like a lot of people in life. But I remember thinking when we were out of COVID, like, man, like all of these things that we applied to this business, now we're like so much stronger, leaner. I'm a better leader. Everything's great. What was your biggest like takeaway or aha moment during that time?
I had a lot of aha moments, like a lot of business owners did. And I feel like we all got kind of beat up, right? Yeah. Like you say, going to war. I feel like we were getting, we came out of that pretty beat up, but luckily for our business model, when we shut down, I thought, oh my gosh, here it goes. Just revenue's going to take a dive.
Yeah.
People are going to quit. I mean, and we had team members on opposite ends of the spectrum. We had some that were like, oh my gosh, we're all going down. And the other ones were like, this is not a big deal. Let's keep going. And the first customer we had come back into our store was my biggest aha moment. So when we opened up the doors, our very first appointment, we're all masked up and got our social distancing signs out, and corporate had done a great job with giving us a lot of assets and printable materials and get ready, sanitize, all that stuff. And we were just looking, ready to go. First customer that comes in our door to get a massage is an employee from the CDC, which is about 2 miles down the road from us.
Wow.
Here in Atlanta. And I just remember taking a breath and looking at this team and looking at our massage therapist and thought, how ironic that our first customer, our first guest is a CDC employee. And, if anybody needs a massage and time to relax, it's them, right? They've been working their butts off. And I thought, we're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then we had guests, our guests that are our members calling in and going, hey, can we get the Venmo? Can we get the PayPal? Can we get the Cash App of this massage therapist? Because I'd like to send them some cash. I know they're out of work right now. I know you guys are shut down. And that was just such a comforting feeling. I mean, we didn't have a ton of them, but the people that did, it was like, okay, we're going to be all right. We're good. So yeah, that was probably my biggest aha moment.
Excellent. So post COVID, like just as I enjoy learning someone's story like chronologically. So you get out of COVID, it's, now, like recently, like talk to me about that. Like you said 5 years into business. What's next? Like, are you scaling to more locations? Are you going to go to other brands? But actually, as we talk about that too, while we were recording or before we were recording, Kasey, you mentioned that, some of the things you're talking about, like with the new workforce, like the younger workforce, and how, well, you tell the story, like some of the things you're doing to get your team into the doors.
Yeah. So, one thing I really want to talk about as a business owner is I feel like there's a lot of, I love hearing about the big guys. Like I love hearing about people that have 10, 15 locations and they're into multiple different brands. And those guys are awesome, but no one's really telling the story of like, okay, here is the details. Like, let's skip the fluff. Let's get into the details of what it is to own a business, even with a great manager, even with a great director. And one of the things is like our labor force, right? So we hear all this stuff about going up on wages. So we do go up on wages, right? For front desk workers, of course, commission based. And, there's a lot of people, and not just the youth, but there's a lot of people in Atlanta that don't have cars because they don't want the expense of it, right? They don't want the insurance, all that. And we have MARTA here is a great, public transportation. A lot of people take MARTA to work and skip the Atlanta traffic. But
what's MARTA? Sorry,
MARTA is our public transportation system. So, a real life example is like we have a person who's open in the store that day and she can't get to work because she takes an Uber to and from work, or she takes the MARTA and the MARTA's not running, or she missed it. And that person is calling the manager going, hey, I can't get to work today. And so we end up calling an Uber for this person to get there, to open the store. And so it's, little things like that, yes, when you work a corporate job, there's a lot of people right now that are driving around wanting to be their own boss, thinking about getting into a business. And I say do it because you already have stressors on you as, working as a corporate employee, right? But there's different kinds of stressors when you have a business. And that's one of those little things. It's like, hey, I can't get to work. We need her to get to work. Let's call her an Uber. We pay for it. She gets there. So it's little things like that. And, you think and you learn from it. You're like, how do we avoid that in the future? It's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think that becoming a business owner, or the term entrepreneur, is like it's like sexy now, right? Like it wasn't before, but now it is. Like it's cool to be a business owner, but people kind of forget about how much stress there is. But it's interesting. Like one of the things I've learned is if you're at a top level, like if you're an executive, you're in a high paid position, then the expectation for how much you work is like a lot anyway. Like in my company, my current company, my new company, as we're launching, I've brought on some great executives, and you know what's normal? They respond all the time. 6 days a week I get messages from my team because they love what we're doing. But what I realized is when someone's an executive in our company, if they're going to work that hard, then they need to have a stake in the results. So like our comp models are all based around basically being what I call an entrepreneur. Right? An entrepreneur is someone who goes out and starts something. I think the definition is utilizing limited resources and obtaining maximum benefit out of those limited resources. That's like what an entrepreneur is.
Right.
And to me, an intrapreneur is inside of an organization. They can still be an entrepreneur just inside of a company, and they're taking limited resources and getting the maximum output. And so like, I always think about how if you're going to be in an executive role, I hope you have something in the upside or some type of control of your own destiny. If not, and you're working that hard anyway, you might as well start your own business because at least then you have control.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, that is kind of, when I first started, if you're working in the corporate world, you're worrying anyways, and you care about your job, right? I've always been in sales. So I'm always like, how am I going to get more clients? Are they going to stay? What can I do? How can I service them? you're doing that anyways. So if you're going to be doing that, you should have more control. And even with our team, the way that we do our compensation plans, my number one thing is like, how can I put these team members in control of their income?
Yes.
That is always, and me, myself, I want to be in control of what I make. And so for people looking to get into franchising, it's like you're worrying anyways. You got a high stress job anyways. Why wouldn't you take this, this leap and be in a little bit more control of your future?
I agree, especially when, there's a stat, Kasey, I don't know if you've ever heard it, but 90% of franchisees, 90% of franchisees are first-time business owners. So, what I think is great about what you did is you took the power of business ownership and utilizing your capital and deploying it into an opportunity, and your skills and your ability to recruit, as you mentioned, and your desire to control your own income, but also married it with a system that already has proven processes to follow.
Right. And, remember my dad was a business owner, started an airline tooling business in 1980 from scratch. There was no handbook. There was no operations manual. My other sister started her own business. There was no handbook, no operations model, no support, no choice of vendors to choose from to do digital advertising that had been vetted, and I kind of watched both of them struggle, right, to find their footing. And so making a leap into franchising, one, it was something I'm passionate about. I really I was a member first. I was a customer,
right,
of the massage brand that I own a franchise of for 5 years.
Right.
So I was already, a big believer in it. And I felt like it was less risky and something I could do. And, I heard there was an article the other day that was talking about having a franchise and how it's just an investment. You should invest in it and keep your corporate gig. And so I guess some brands you could do that. But I do think if you're in the service-based industry, for me being in corporate and having this kind of as an investment side thing versus when I actually quit and got into my business, it was like night and day. Revenue, growth. I feel like you have to be in it if it's a service-based industry. Until it right now, I don't work weekends. But I'll go in tomorrow. I don't have to. I'll go in tomorrow. It's Saturday. I'll go in about 12:30 or 1. Just check on things. I don't have to, but in the beginning I did. And so yeah, I mean, there's the pros and cons, and entrepreneurship and being your own boss. People think, oh my gosh, they're so, wealthy and they have so much money. And it's like, well, no, we just used our resources and we're trying to make money, but more so we're trying to control our time. Like we're trying to get back our time. I have a 4-year-old son and I want to spend time with him. And this allows me to do that.
That's excellent. Yeah, I think like having control over your time is one of the most like gratifying things you can have. And I think there's a big difference between having to work on a Saturday and choosing to. You're choosing to, and it's obviously helping you lead to your success. But you want to do that because you care about that business. It's a part of you, and it's an extension of you and your family. And I think that's great. So what would you say, like, to take the business to the next level? What do you need to do? Is it hire more people, take a pay cut to reinvest? Is it get a loan to grow the business? Like how do you continue to grow the company, or what's your plan to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't have the answer yet. I'm kind of one of those people, I think when I first started my business, I checked my ego at the door, just because you're always learning. And there's days when I go, okay, yeah, we're going to expand. Maybe we open another location. And then there's days where it's like, maybe we look at other brands. I do love our business, but one of the challenges is it's specialized labor, right? I'm always hiring, always. Even on Monday, like this coming Monday, I have 5 interviews lined up for a massage therapist just to get some good ones, Yeah. And the more massage therapists I have, the good ones, the more the business grows and the more clients we can see. And, one of the most frustrating things right now is someone calls in and goes, hey, can I get a massage today? And I have to say, no, we're fully committed. And we have a big staff, right? So I think to grow, it's really just recruiting. It's always recruiting. And then looking at other concepts. I would love to have a concept that's not open 7 days a week, maybe has less labor, still in the wellness field. And, I'm always looking at different opportunities. We're always talking about different things. My husband and I just in and out of our space. So we'll know it when we see it, like most entrepreneurs, we're like, you always have your eyes open.
So that's interesting with what you're doing. I know for me, like if I was looking at another business to expand and I was in I'll give you an example. Let me back up for a second. I have been in franchising since 2014 and it's a skill set that I've honed in on, right? And I've spent a lot of time and I love it. My previous company was in the lead generation space related to franchising. So actually finding people like yourself who want to invest in a franchise and connecting those people with franchise opportunities. We're a very large organization. When I exited, I had to find a business that would not do that, of course, right? You have to go into a different space, but I still wanted to be in leveraging what I know how to do, what I'm good at. And hence the decision to become a franchisor, as I mentioned to you before we started recording. But and also because like I was put on earth to help people become business owners. I believe it. Like it's what I love to do. And so what I've learned is I love to help people become business owners and help them continue, right? As a franchisor, I get to do that. But I need to leverage what I know how to do already. If I was in your shoes, you know how to provide what you're in the business of, to me, is a customer experience, right? You're providing people with a clean, safe, happy, enjoyable experience. You've got the right people and the right managers and the right sales process and all the things to give them that experience. So I'd want to go into a business that complements that, especially one that could be in the same vicinity. Have you thought about like waxing, like the waxing industry? Only because I think about when people own massage, I feel like that's often a lot of times the next business they add on.
There are a lot of, it is kind of, franchising, what I've learned is it's a big, small world, right? Like there's a lot of overlap and connections, and a lot of the same people that I know, and those people may have a massage location, but then they have waxing brands, they have lash brands, they have chiropractic brands.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, right now this is still our baby, and I'm still kind of what I say in the thick of it. I'm in the thick of it. I'm calling an Uber to get a front desk girl to work. Yeah. But that's okay because I understand her and her situation, and she's great, and it's good. But it is a reality of owning a business. It's like you can't just walk away from your business, right? Like we do so many things in a day that I tell my friends, I'm like, I've learned how to change air filters early on because I didn't know they were on the roof. It's things like that. And, I've learned a lot about people and how to interview and mistakes I've made with bad hires and things I've done right with good hires. And I'm grateful for all of it. I feel like I could help a lot of people. I should write a book one day of like, okay, here's what I learned.
Yeah. Well, owning a business is the ultimate personal development journey. Like that's what I've learned. Like to get to the next level, wherever that is you want to get to, you got to become a better person, better in the
Yeah.
sense like a better leader, but like as I start my company to do what I want to do, I can't do certain things. Like I have to just cut out certain activities if they drain my energy or if they're, just right now, I can't do it. I'm on a very specific path and it's like eye on the prize and that's what I got to do. Got to get up earlier, got to eat healthier, got to do just certain things. It's just to perform at the level that I want to perform at. And I learned that. And throughout my years as a business owner, I've had to improve myself before I could improve my business. And you're your biggest asset, right? Like you are the asset of yourself. And so you're the CEO of yourself.
Right.
So one of the things you said that really stood out to me is this recruiting. You put that first always. I think that you probably have an amazing team because you've spent the energy finding them.
Yeah, I mean, and I love to do it. On Monday will be my best day next week because I love to meet people and, behind every person that you interview, they've got dreams and aspirations and bills and things like that. And I just, people will say to me, how do you recruit? Kasey has a great culture at her store. Her culture is great. She's great at recruiting. And they're like, how do you do it? My franchisor is like, come talk to us, speak on this panel, talk about how you recruit. And I'm like, it really is checking your ego at the door and being just so, I know we overuse the word authentic.
Yeah.
We overuse it, but just being real with that person sitting in front of you because they may be looking at you going, man, I wonder how she started her own business. And I tell them, this is what I did. I took my 401k. This is how I did it. Got a loan, still paying it off. I tell the real story and I just think that we should skip the fluff. If people want to get into franchising, let's talk about it in detail.
Yeah.
How much money did you make in the first year? How much money did you make the second year? How'd you do it? What do I need to avoid? What's the pitfalls? How do you just details, and I feel like that's what helps me with recruiting is just being very honest about what we have to offer, what it's really going to be like, and then see if it's a fit.
Totally. It's amazing. I think people don't realize that a leader, nobody wants to work for a leader who's like perfect, like just never shows any of their vulnerability at all. Like, people want to work for someone who says, hey, look, I've actually never done this. I've never been, in this situation before. And I'm a little bit uncertain myself. And let's work through this together. Now, obviously, they want a leader that also is certain most times.
Right.
But here and there, you could be uncertain. And that'll show them that you're a real person. You're a human being. And they'll want to work with you. They'll want to go into the trenches with you because you're real and you're we'll use a different word than authentic.
We need to come up with a synonym for authentic.
Yeah, genuine. I mean, genuine to me is a word that's not as often used, and to me denotes like you're real.
Yeah, and we're always learning. Like if you're going to be a business owner and you're going to make the jump to franchising, I say do it. Do it. Make sure you have a second income if you can. If you don't have a rich grandma or a rich family or someone to fall back, something like that. But
yeah,
and then just go into it with, it was hard for me in the beginning because I was an expert in my space. In my corporate gig, yeah. I was, you're kind of at expert level after that many years. And when you open your first business, you are like a freshman. You think but you're just learning every day. Even now, 5 years later, and after all the years that you have in franchising, you're still learning and probably always questioning yourself. I think as a leader, you're always questioning, did I do that right? Should I have done it different? And then you say, okay, this is what I did. It worked. You make a note of it and then you just repeat it.
Yeah, except it's like, it's interesting because when it comes to people, like I always say, like people are not computers; they're people, right? So they're not all the same. Like I was just going through something like that today and this week. Like I had someone on my team. I think what you're probably doing a pattern of is like you listen to understand. I could tell that about you just in the time we've spoken, right? So like you probably listen to your team, you understand exactly what is going on and what you need to do to help them, and you genuinely care about them. Like a lot of people I don't think would call an Uber like that, unfortunately, and that would be short-sighted, but you are making it happen that teammate can get to their job and do their job for your business, but also for themselves. You're making it accessible to them, which I think is great.
Yeah. And I mean, and the thing that I didn't think of when I first started was, if you own a candle shop, you put the candles on the shelf, they're there, you sell them, it's a tangible item. And you're in the service industry, you are dealing with people. And especially massage therapists, they are one of a kind. Like they are very passionate about what they do. And never have I met a therapist that said, I don't want to get into this to help people, right? And so you've got to take really good care of them because they're in a room with their hands working. So anything that's in the back that you could make easier for them, whether they have a question about payroll or they have a question about benefits or they have a question about training or, whatever it is, you have to take care of that stuff outside the room for them because they're busy, right? And there's this energetic thing with therapists. You have to kind of protect their energy. So whenever I hit the door of our location, it's like, we have to create you can't really force a culture, but you create an environment where people are okay at work. Their energy is good. The vibe is good.
Yeah.
And that's a different kind of thing in the massage business, but I love it. I actually really love it. So.
Well, Kasey, thank you for joining this episode today. To our listeners, if you're enjoying the Franchise Founders podcast, please do hit the like, subscribe button, leave us a review. We could always use more reviews. We're trying to get to the top of the franchise search podcast, world. And if you're a franchisee and you're listening to this is the direction that we're heading as the Franchise Founders podcast. So if you're interested and you want to tell your story, reach out and we'd love to have you on. Thank you again, Kasey, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Founders podcast.
If you want our help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business to anything in between, shoot us an email at franchisefounders@gmail.com.